Hello and welcome to the PopCULT channel with your hosts Tommy and Tyler.
PopCult is the place to go for all things popular culture, films, TV, gaming, and entertainment news. You'll find podcast discussions, reviews, video essays, and interviews with filmmakers all here on this channel. Today's discussion, our main topic is Severance Season 2. What are your overall thoughts of the show?
I loved it. I thought it was a great finale, and we'll get into why, because I got a feeling from our earlier discussion that you don't necessarily share that feeling. But yeah, it was good. Loved it. I rewatched it in preparation for this, and I think there's a lot of stuff that we can kind of like get into. Really exciting stuff for season 3 as well.
Yeah, definitely. Still bits that I enjoyed. Still lots of good stuff to talk about. But yeah, I definitely have some criticisms of this second season. I suppose just to start off with, we'll both talk about how we got into the show because I personally got onto it quite late.
Yeah,
Um,
me too.
it was only when the sort of buzz around the premiere of the second season came about that I thought, okay, maybe I'm going to give this a go. I'd always I hadn't really watched many of the Apple TV Plus shows that had been out that have been.
Nah, me neither.
Yeah, a lot of the stuff I see them making is always, have like Tom Hanks and Christopher Walken in it, and this all star cast and of this TV series that nobody's ever heard of. So there's a
I mean,
little,
that's a whole other discussion that you can have about the quality of TV and generally how much stuff is being produced all at once. I told you about this show We Crashed with Jared Leto and Anne Hathaway that no one has seen or heard of. I mean, at
yeah,
least in my circle. And you're like, wait, that's a big 8-episode miniseries on Apple TV, and no one has heard of it. With like huge stars, as you said, Tom Hanks, fucking Jason Segel, and Harrison Ford in that show Shrinking, and Silo, and like there's so much stuff, and none of it has any cultural impact or relevance until it becomes a meme, or if something viral happens. And Severance got lucky because Severance was carried by YouTube theory videos and memes, and I think a lot of people checked it out because of the internet conversation around it. So
yeah, definitely something that spread through word of mouth on just its merit of how good that first season was. And yeah, it does seem to be one of the few shows that Apple has produced that sort of really broke into that cultural conversation. The second season had just debuted,
mhm.
and I went back and I sort of binged the whole first season, and
You
I
haven't watched it before then?
hadn't watched any of it before then. I knew the concept, and knew sort of the premise and sort of the vibe of the show. But yeah, then sort of ended up binging pretty much the whole season and absolutely loved it. I thought the hook at the end when Mark realizes that Miss Casey is Gemma and she's still alive, I thought that was great. And then
Brilliant stuff.
yeah, I think if I was to sort of grade that first season, it was like it's like an 9 out of 10. Really enjoyed it. Incredibly well produced, well directed, and really well acted as well.
I mean, it's almost perfect for me as well. I think I would give it, I don't know, like a 9.5 out of 10. It's just great television, great entertainment. I got into it a little bit earlier than you. Sorry to rub it in, but I watched it back in, I think, October of 2024, which, it was a long wait nonetheless, like a few months. And I cannot imagine people who watched the show as it was airing back in, what was it, 2021, 2020, the first season. Um, I cannot imagine waiting this long to get answers to that cliffhanger. So yeah, I really enjoyed it. Got recommended it a few times, and every time I was like, oh, I need to get an Apple TV subscription. I already have 1,000 subscriptions that I barely use. So, but it was worth it. I think it's worth it just to, if you were on the fence about getting an Apple TV Plus subscription, and you still have your free trial. Just get your free trial now, binge the whole show, and then cancel it, and it would be worth it. Even it would be worth it just to pay for a month,
There,
just to
there
watch it.
goes our Apple TV Plus sponsor right there.
I mean, they can sponsor us, and then I can change my tune about it. But as of now, I'd say, if you were on the fence, just do something and watch it. It's worth it. It's one of the best things on TV right now. It's this very engaging, high concept sci-fi, which is fairly rare right now in TV and movies. It's just one of those premises that you wish you came up with, right? Like something that just the premise alone gives way to a bunch of unique interactions and dynamics. The idea of the ini and outie being two separate entities, and that's so well realized, I think, and we'll get to that, but I think it's so well realized in this second season. But it's just so fascinating in its own right, the fact that they behave so differently, and one is basically a pure and childish version of the other. I don't know. And then you add on these incredible performances and the great sense of style and the amazing cinematography and this poignant music, and you get the drill. Big TV, in my opinion. So very
Yeah,
good stuff.
yeah, no, I totally agree. It's especially after the first season, it was something I went and recommended to a lot of people. But I do feel a bit differently now after the second season. It's something I wouldn't be as strong to recommend after now this second season's come out. But yeah, so I suppose we'll go into season 2 and we'll sort of break it down by episode.
Yeah.
So episode 1 was Hello, Miss Cobell of series 2, and it picked up right after the events of the finale. In the season finale, we had the innies, except for Dylan, using the overtime contingency, and they all had the chance to see what their outside lives were like, and we learned a bit about everybody's home life that we hadn't seen that perspective before. And this is one of the things I also really like about the show, is that there's these time skips between the innie and the outie perspective, because here we pick up supposedly 5 months after this sort of breakout.
Supposedly.
And, well, yeah, exactly. So I mean, obviously we're being told that by Mr. Milchek, and we assume that that's probably a lie. But it's that not knowing, what happens in between that time. We see any Mark, because he doesn't. Yeah, we never know how long that time has passed outside. So it's those are one of the aspects that the concept really plays well with. And I thought the opening episode was a strong sort of return. They had a lot of it just was bugging me already at the beginning that, and maybe this is just how it plays in with the innie's sort of naivety, but it was kind of bugging me how everything sort of just went back to normal, seemingly. We were back at Lumen after this basically rebellion that had happened, and sort of Mr. Milchek was sort of giving everybody the opportunity to be like, hey, actually, well, I'm going to run this better than Miss Cobell did. We're going to treat you better. You have the option to leave if you want to leave. We'll be having all these wellness checkups and all these things. And it just felt a little bit jarring that everybody was back at Lumen already and everything was copacetic. But I suppose that insinuating the 5-month break was to try and ease that, I guess. But yeah, it was a bit jarring to me. That was one thing.
I feel like that was kind of the point, like leaving you with this unexpected feeling, like Mark gets back into the office and starts sprinting, of course, because he's looking for Miss Casey, and then he just gets to the MDR office, and there's a bunch of people there that he's never met, and it's so disorienting and weird how it doesn't really compute. It doesn't work. It makes no sense, right? So I think the feeling of what's going on, it's very intentional, and we get that with the second episode as well, where we get everything from the outie perspective too. So, I felt like that was a very, again, it's probably the most similar in tone to season one as well, because you have Mr. Milchick doing all those, like with the balloons and introducing the new team
They
and
have
trying to
that weird video presentation, and
the
it kind
video
of
presentation.
tells you that they've become like heroes of the innie world sort of thing, but which all is probably lies. But yeah, it's very very bizarre, very surreal.
I
Um,
love that. I mean, I feel like that really feeds into one other element of Severance that I love, which is the sense of humor. Just this very weird and off kilter kind of like approach to just making you laugh at the weirdest things. One of my favorite lines in the whole show is "This is the world's biggest waterfall." Just what the hell? What are
yeah,
you talking about?
yeah, you're right. I think for me, when season one was working at its best, it's when it is a dark comedy satire, those Twilight Zone elements sort of sprinkled in just add to
Yeah.
that. But yeah, my favorite aspect of the show is probably the comedy and the dynamic between the characters for sure.
So, do you think that the comedy aspect is lacking in the second season compared to the first one?
Yeah, I think it is, and and I don't know whether that's just because we're further down the story and we
Yeah,
expect these more of these mysteries to be revealed to us, and a lot of the comedy does just come from the obscurity and the mystery in season one. It's like, oh,
totally.
why does Milchek come in and have this dance party? And then they have that,
Defiant
in the
jazz.
yeah, they have that similar sequence in the finale, and in the finale it didn't work for me. Whereas I loved the dancing sequence in the first season. It was really unsettling and but also hilarious at the same time. And yeah, it didn't, and maybe it didn't work for me as well in the second season because
It was
I
a repeat.
it was a repeat, and I feel like we should be progressing things further. Yeah, I don't think the comedy was working as well in the second season, to be honest. And also, I think, like we've said before, a lot of the second season we are away from Lumen Office with the
Yeah,
MDR crew, and I think that the Dylan, Mark, Helly, Irving, and Milchek, the dynamic of those guys in the Lumen Office was where most of that like comedy was coming from for me.
totally. Yeah, no, I think the change, because it's not really a lack of comedy. It's just it changes the way it's distributed in the show, but like the way it's just a result of the story progressing and going to darker places. I mean, we are in a place right now in the story where a bunch of stuff has happened, and very dark stuff as well. So there's not much room, unfortunately, to joke around and just be at the office and exist in this space.
Yeah,
And
exactly. Like you're saying, maybe the stakes have been raised in season two to the point where I don't know, the silly obscurity jokes that are made don't hit as well.
they still have some stuff,
Oh yeah,
with Miss Huang, and that "Why are you a child?" line, which
yeah,
is
that was good.
insanely funny. And Dylan in general remains a very funny character, if not a bit one note, I guess, with its cursing and just generally being flabbergasted and confused about things.
Yeah, and Irving was probably one of the greatest sources of humor for me in the first season.
Yeah, I love
Just
Irving. It's
how yeah,
probably my favorite character too.
yeah, same. And just how devoted he was and how bizarre he was in when we're learning about the roles that they have at MDR. Yeah, and I know obviously in the second season we don't see him anywhere near as much.
No, yeah, he pretty much disappears uh, after episode 4, and
Yeah.
then we have that beautiful dinner scene. Very creepy, very cryptic, but maybe I'm getting ahead of myself.
Yeah, we'll jump on to episode 2. It's called Goodbye, Miss Selvig. This is when we now basically get, a mirror of the first episode. We pick up right from the finale, but now we're seeing everything from everybody's outies perspective. And again, this is where the concept is utilized so well in the way it structures the narrative as well.
Hmm.
And yeah, I think the show is firing on all cylinders when it's doing things like this. And so yeah, we pick up again straight from the finale. Sort of suspicions are starting to arise around Helly, whether she's herself, and because I think this is the episode where all the we get everyone explaining what happened when they were in the overtime contingency, and Helly lies to Irving, about the night gardener thing that she supposedly said she saw. And
People were losing their minds online, just like, this is not Helly. This is
yeah.
not
What did
Helly.
you think? I definitely had. It was yeah. I think probably by episode 3, I think I was thinking, yeah, I feel like I can see this twist.
Yeah, I think that was pretty much, they didn't wait too long to reveal it. You
Yeah,
can see Helena Egan on the outside, kind of like studying the tapes so that she knows how her ini, acts and behaves, and what her relationship to the other characters is. So generally, I think, it was pretty telegraphed, but, in a good way. You're kind of like waiting for the show to confirm your suspicions, and then, like, the beauty of kind of like watching a show like this week by week is that you can engage in this conversation online, just watching videos and reading comments and seeing, people theorizing, and that kind of like helps you create an image in your head of what's going on, which, with the first 3 to 4 episodes, the main point of contention was, is this Helly, is this Helena, what's going on with Mark. And um by the way, did you see that video that they made, where they splice together, or maybe, like, that's not the right word, but like they show the two sequences side by side. The one in episode 1, where the Innies get into the severed floor from the elevator, and the sequence in episode 2, where the outies are going into the office and getting into the elevator.
yeah,
And it's perfectly timed. Like, they shot it in a way that, like, 9 seconds pass between one character entering the elevator and exiting on the severed floor. And, it's a one long take in the first episode, where Mark is kind of like looking around frantically, and then interacting with Dylan, and then Irving, and then Ellie, or Helena, I should say. And I felt like that was such testament to the um, attention to detail that the show has for certain things. And I feel like I think I read somewhere that Ben Stiller said, we did it this way because we knew that someone would just edit the scenes together to see if, it was realistically put together. And I feel like that's such a cool touch. They didn't have to do it.
yeah, and it's when shows put that much care and attention into the little details. That's when you do sort of feel like you need to theorize and things like that, because you feel like everything is intentional. All the little things that we see. Um, yeah, and then so also in this episode, I quite like the scene where we have Harmony Cabell leaves Lumen seemingly for good. She's in that sort of conference meeting with Helena and Mr. Drummond, and we learn that she's clearly got some information that's very important to them, and
Yeah.
they want to try and keep her around, and they also offer her that sort of lift in the car, which we later realize these drivers are like sort of basically hitmen, and they do all they do the dirty work for Lumen. So basically,
Yeah.
she was it seemed like she was on her way to be killed at that moment, and that
And
really,
and Christopher Walken character was one of these
yes,
drivers, right?
yeah. So that's revealed I believe, in the last episode or the second to last episode.
Second to last, because
Yeah,
we don't really see
no, we don't,
Irving
do we?
or Bert in the last episode. I have a question. Mr. Drummond, was he in the first season, or is he a new character in season 2?
I'm pretty certain he was a new character in season 2.
Okay, yeah, I think so too, but I feel
And
like maybe it was,
he sort of replaced that other. Do you remember we had the other security guy who got
yeah, who
killed?
dies, or like the doctor lady.
Yeah,
she kills him,
but I'm pretty
I
sure
think.
Drummond's a new character. In the first, we see him in one of the early episodes, and he's spying on Mark and his sister, and we see the tattoo, the frolic
Yeah,
tattoo on his hand.
frolic on his hand. Yeah, too. Okay, yeah, I thought so, but I wanted to be sure.
Yeah,
That's a very menacing guy,
yeah, he's good.
and
He's
also very
very well
funny. Like,
cast.
I don't know, he has that quality that is perfect for Severance, because it's both menacing and kind of hilarious in his.
And he's got that
Mm,
kind of old timey feel about him, like all the like Jamie Egan has that. He just like feels
yeah,
he's a man out of time.
out of time. Everything is out of time in this show. Is so interesting, and I feel like we see way more of it in this second season. I know that the first season, being more self-contained, was kind of its strength, because it was basically dystopian The Office. But I think season 2 has this interesting way of kind of like showing us, we can see it in episode 1 and then episode 2, the way we follow the innies and then the outies, and you can see it more clearly how both, like, these characters are completely different from each other, and they want different things, and they are looking for different things, and it becomes kind of like the crutch of the whole season, how these two halves kind of like interact and what they want. um and that's why I liked season 2 as a whole.
Yeah,
Probably.
we definitely expand on the world a lot more in season 2, and it's more it's less like concept focused and more character driven in that second
Yeah,
season. Yeah, so
it has to be, in a way,
yeah, yeah,
because
yeah,
once you introduce the concept, then you need the hook to be the characters. Is my favorite character going to be okay? Is Irving going to be okay, or
yeah.
is he going to die? Yeah.
Yes, and then so episode 3, we get it's called Who is Alive,
Who is alive?
and
Yeah.
we get sort of this is Mark's beginning of the reintegration process. He's that Regabi seeks him out and tells him, I think he was planning on shining that torch in his eyes to try
That
and
was the most useless thing in the whole season,
what
right?
shine. Oh, so I was just
The
that's why I was bringing this up because
the
that
whole
it doesn't.
sequence.
Well, I mean, the whole aspect of reintegration. I don't know how you can have. I don't know how that can be so integral to like two of these episodes with Mark in the second season, and then in the final season, in the final episode, it's completely forgotten about, and he only reintegrates or switches when the plot suits it. And then the final episode, the plot didn't suit the reintegration theme, and it doesn't come up at all. So I do think that was a bit of a nothing plot point, and maybe that I assume it will be expanded upon in the next season. But yeah,
I'm sure it will be.
it just seemed integral to this series or to this season, and didn't get explored too much in the latter half.
It is true that I was like really surprised when I realized that that's where they were going. Like, was I already? We are reintegrating Mark already? That's insane. We
Yeah.
are, what's going to happen now? And then nothing really happens with that plot line for the longest time. We have a few of these, very beautifully made sequences where we switch between, locations, and it's all very well done. It's insanely gorgeous cinematography and
Oh, what
shot composition.
the
Yeah.
actual like
Yeah,
visualization of the
yeah,
reintegration
the
process.
way,
Oh, it's amazing!
like,
It's amazing. Yeah,
that's so well done, and it's probably why they wanted to have reintegration as an element in the story. uh, I guess, the way they explain it away is that he didn't finish the reintegration process. Regabi was, going to finish it, but then Devon kind of like stopped her, and then Mark didn't want to go through with it, and then Miss Cobell got into the picture. So he says it, I think, in the last episode. Mark says, I will, finish my reintegration and we can be as one, when he discusses things with his ini. I guess we are meant to interpret that as a way for us to be okay. He was reintegrating and he is experiencing, the effects of reintegration when the plot needs him to. But we'll get back to this when it's important again, because now we want to focus on this other stuff, which is also important and also interesting. And I guess we put a kind of like we stopped that in its track, and it's not progressing until we need it to progress, which you could argue is a lazy way to deal with such an important plot point. But at the same time, I feel like what we got instead is just as interesting. So
Yeah,
I don't know.
definitely. It's a different direction. It just, as I was sort of recapping through the episodes and sort of realizing how much focus they put on the reintegration aspect of it
Yeah,
in sort of the mid at the beginning of the season, and the fact that it never comes around to it in the last 3-4 episodes was I did think that was a bit of a missed opportunity. Um,
especially because I think he kind of like begins the reintegration process, and then the following episode is them kind of like doing the ortbo
yeah,
in with the world's tallest waterfall. And that's an episode that doesn't really have anything to do with the reintegration plot line.
no, but he does. In that episode he has the flash. It's that he sees Gemma when he has
Oh
the
yeah,
heli. He sees Gemma there, and I think that's sort of the first bleeding in the outie and the innie that we see from the reintegration in that episode. But yeah, well, we'll go on to that episode 4, Woe's Hollow, which was my favorite episode of the season.
yeah, it's
Um,
probably one of the best for sure.
yeah, and I remember it starts out so slow,
It's so
and
weird.
it starts out so slow and so weird. I think Irving starts with the close up on Irving's face in the middle of the frozen lake.
It's
Uh,
his episode too. I
yes,
love that.
yeah, and I think that's probably why it's both of our favorites. But and then we have them wandering around the like the snowy wilderness for a bit, and we're learning all this Lumen lore about this Kieran's brother, his
Brother, yeah.
twin, wasn't it? Who was like messed up on ether and was having this weird sort of hallucinogenic like voyage in the snowy wilderness. And it was just like, where is this going? It was so meandering at the beginning, and then it just like starts firing on absolute all cylinders, and it was almost like a season finale, kind of the amount of
Yeah.
sort of progression and sort of revelations we get in this episode, and like we said when they were doing the is she Helly or is she not, I thought that was something they were gonna play out for so much
For the
longer.
whole season. Yeah.
So I was
Me too.
really glad that we got that all in that episode. But this was a fantastic episode in my opinion.
Yeah, this was one of the best for sure. And one of my main questions is, how does that TV work? The one,
Well, see,
the one that,
so I was going to say that too. And is that just, am I being like looking at this too logically, or am I being nitpicky? But
I
like,
mean, this is not really a complaint. It's just, wait,
but,
how
but,
does this
but
even?
I'm with you because I saw that and I'm like, okay, well, this place has to be a simulation then, because it's like that's not
Okay.
logistically, that doesn't work. And also
And
there's a bit when we see in like Petey's map,
yeah.
there's a massive area called team building, and I was like,
Oh,
okay,
really?
maybe that's just like a big simulation room, and that's what this place is. But again, and maybe I think actually I don't think they'll ever necessarily answer that or go back
It
to it.
looks like they are. I mean, the landscape feels like they're just, a few miles away from the office. I mean, they took them to, because there's Norway mountains and trees, and that's the kind of landscape that you have around the office and around the town.
Yeah. But
So
then if it is a real place, this Woe's Hollow, then
yeah,
but then you are right to question, okay, where the fuck's the plug for this TV? Or how did Irving wake up as is Innie in the middle of the frozen lake? That's why I thought this whole episode had a very like simulation dream feel.
yeah, it did feel really weird. And who were those, kind of like replicants?
Yeah,
Like
exactly. They had the
weird.
doubles. Also, Irving has his sort of he has a dream and he goes out into the the wilderness by himself, and he ends up basically
Yeah.
passing out and falling asleep in the snow.
I felt like he was dying. Like I was
Well,
like, what, is Irving gonna die now?
exactly, and he should have died if it was
Of
real.
hypothermia.
Yeah. So then I was also like, okay, well, this is definitely a simulation. But then we never get any answers to that, or we never get any callbacks to that. So maybe it's not, and just the TV is just something that's supposed to be surreal and weird, and it's not.
I mean, the technology in this world doesn't really work like our technology, and
Yeah.
the 80s, like early 90s aesthetic is just that. It's an aesthetic. It's not really how the technology works per se. So I guess we can justify this as just different technology, and this is like um battery or ether powered kind of TV. I don't
Yeah.
know. But yeah, that's not really a big issue. I think this is definitely one of the high points of the entire show. I love the confrontation at the waterfall. I loved the way we got the answer to the big question up until this point, which is, is this a Heli? Is this Helena? And how does this work? We have Mr. Milkshake kind of like calling on the radio, be like, okay, release the Glasgow block, he
Yeah, that
says.
was
Is
it.
it? Yeah. Which is another thing that we discover Miss Cobell kind of like created, which is another thing that we have to discuss later.
Yeah.
But yeah, I thought this was stellar.
Irving's so good in this scene. He's so good, especially when I think Helly says, "Oh, do it, Seth," and then he has such a good line. He's like, "Yes, Seth." He's like, when he realizes that's his real name and they know each other and everything. Like, he's just, yeah, he really switches. He switches to the point where I was like, "Oh, this almost doesn't even seem like you anymore." But he's just having, I don't know. That's sort of his arc, I guess. He is now broken free from like Lumen's like ideology.
I don't know if we had confirmation that the reduced role of John Turturro was due to like some other commitment, like with movies and TV shows, because
I bet that's the case.
it feels like that. It feels weird that like all of a sudden we're like, okay, let's get rid of this character. He's probably one of the most beloved characters in the show. And let's have him back for a couple of episodes, but not really. I feel like that's probably it, but like at the same time it makes sense that his story would take place more outside of Lumen, because we realize he's kind of like infiltrating Lumen, right? Like he's kind of like investigating them and trying to dig some dirt on how the company works, and he has a bunch of files and information on people like Bert. And the even just the concept of him having these flashes and these visions in the first season of the hallway with the elevator going down and him drawing it, all of these are clues that he knows more than he lets on, or even his ini knows, which is so why it's so interesting that his ini is such a devout follower of Kier and the principles. And I love this kind of idea that someone that is so clearly against Lumen on the outside becomes a cultist on the inside.
I
That
love
was
the
so well
whole
done.
I love the whole reveal of the painting when we see his outie as well in season 1, and we're like, oh, what is this theme of this dripping black paint constantly?
Yeah.
And he's just like doing this over and over again, repeating it to try and just ingrain it in his subconscious.
Totally.
I thought that was a really cool aspect of his character as well. Episode 5, I think this is where this second half of the season starts to drop off in quality.
Yeah.
And especially in this episode, the next episode.
What do you mean? We have in Trojans a horse. we have one of the most amazing scenes with Mr. Milkshake. Well, I mean, dinner scene is good.
What was the really good milkshake scene in this one?
Milkshake. Okay, so he has the performance review, right? and it's the most, that's a very Lumen like season one kind of like bullshit thing, where it's like, oh, you're using the paper clips wrong,
He's using too
and
big adjectives and
yeah,
expecting.
you're using too many big words, and then he goes in front of a mirror or uses like a surface as a mirror, and he starts, like repeating this sentence over and over again and making it less and less and less complex, until it's just grow, and it becomes this growling sound. I don't know. I felt like that was such a good. Like, I hated Mr. Milchick, and I still do. It's such an interesting character, and I think he gets to shine so much more in this season, especially because Miss Cobell is out of the picture for so long. But like, I love how he is insufferable to us whenever he's interacting with the innies, because he is the power figure in their life, kind of like telling them what to do. But as soon as he's interacting with Mr. Drummond or the board or even Miss Cobell in the first season, you're like, oh, kind of like this guy, kind of dig him.
Yeah, and
And
they're definitely planting the seeds, and I think this episode 5 really sort of pushes his narrative down the direction of, oh, we're going on a bit of a redemption arc here for Milchek, and
yeah,
actually it seems like he's gonna follow in a similar shoes as Cabell, and he's gonna then be an anti-Lumen, or he's gonna break free from it or something, and that's
yeah, well,
and I do like that, but my problem is they don't take it anywhere. He
not yet.
not yet, but my issue with it is that, so they plant the seed of him having a bad performance review of Mr. Drummond. We see him; he almost takes out those frustrations on Miss Wong.
It sounds like she was the one who kind of like
Yes,
told the board or like
it's
whoever
it's
is in
almost like she's
charge.
secretly observing and managing him at the same time.
Yeah,
And then I think in like the episode 8 or episode 9, we have Milchek's conversation with Mr. Drummond, and he literally tells him to fuck off, and he's like,
yeah.
he tells him to do one.
Devour feculence.
Yeah, and again, I love the scene, but then in the next episode, he is then chasing Mark and Helly and Dylan down to
Yeah, he's
stop.
still doing his job. He doesn't like Mr. Drummond, but that doesn't mean that he doesn't like Lumen or working for them anymore. It's a very complex relationship. It's clearly hinted at. Well, hinted. I mean, it's pretty much spelled out. But like the way, with even that very weird thing with the paintings where all the characters are have blackface, kind of like to make Mr. Milchick part of Lumen history.
Oh yeah,
And the way he discusses this with the other person of color, which is Natalie, yeah. The way they kind of like try to comes to grip with like what does that mean, why are you doing this is so weird. And I feel like that's the start of him kind of like turning, and we haven't seen his end point yet, which is fine. We're on season 2. I think we have at least 2 more seasons, unless they want to milk it for 5 years or 5 to 10 years. But I doubt they have the story to go ahead, like to go long with,
yeah.
like
Totally get that. Then they were definitely those seeds are being planted for sure. It just felt similar to like the reintegration storyline. It felt like something that we focused on really heavily with in this season as a plot point, and then was kind of forgotten about in that finale because we didn't have time to do that. It was all about Mark and Gemma and Helly and that dynamic. But yeah, I just thought it was a bit of a hard turn from Milchek to then become the devout Lumen. I'm going to stop everything that's going wrong here in that final episode.
Yeah, I would have just stayed in the bathroom at that point. Like, okay, just whatever.
Yeah, exactly. Why is he
throwing
trying?
you.
Why is he trying so hard to stop these guys? And maybe because he knows how Lumen is, and he could be killed if he.
Yeah, he's afraid of the consequences, I guess.
Yeah.
He threw them a party and they weren't even happy about it. Oh, what a shame.
And then next episode 6, Attila.
Attila.
And we have Yeah, we have a few sort of Dylan finding the hidden picture from Herb that he mentions. It's the last thing he says to him when he gets his innie gets taken away at the end of episode 4. He shouts,
Hmm.
"Hang in there," doesn't he? And there's that "hang in there" poster.
Hmm.
Um, and we get Helly and Mark. They have sex in the office, and because Helly felt like she didn't really get that opportunity last time, and wanted to
That
share
was
that with him.
beautiful.
That was nice. I like that scene. And then, like you mentioned before, it was quite a good scene. We have Irving goes round for dinner at Bert's house, and Denethor from Lord of the Rings. And
Denethor was there.
all I'm thinking about is like, where's this fucking guy's tomatoes?
Another disgusting scene of this guy eating.
Yeah, he's got
Uh,
such a wrinkly face. This guy. I'm surprised I haven't seen him in lots more stuff because he's very good.
John Noble is a very good actor, but yeah, is not one that you see everywhere. I immediately recognize him. I was watching the episode with my girlfriend, and I was like, "Oh, did you see? Who's that? Who's that? Who's that?" And it was like, "Oh, come on, just tell me." I was like, "Oh, come on, we just watched The Lord of the Rings. How can you forget Denethor, father of Boromir, Faramir, steward of Gondor?" The most disgusting human being in the show, in the movies.
Yeah, he's good, and he kind of has a bit of a similar role, similar
Yeah,
role here.
like this very slimy, kind of like weird, you know, manipulator, I guess. I don't know. Like he clearly knows more, and the wine, it's interesting. I don't know. The whole sequence in their house is so interesting. And I am a bit disappointed looking back that we didn't really get much more. Like it's clearly hinting, like, visually with the fire behind Bert, and like through the conversation that they're having and what is being said, like, oh, you met this guy 12 years ago at this Lumen party, and you were like, oh, but 12 years ago the Lumen wasn't really severing people yet, like
Yeah,
it's a recent procedure, so that there's something there that they're not telling you. And I was waiting for them to give me more about Bert and about this other guy. And I guess we'll get it at some point in the future, which is fine. But like, I feel like if you introduce something like this, in the show, then it has to have a role in the finale, or in the story,
yeah,
for it to resonate, to remain relevant. If not, it just feels like, they wanted to give Irving something to do, and the relationship with Bert was very interesting and strange aspect of season 1, so they wanted to explore that, and they did, which is fine. But yeah, I would agree that this is the kind of like, after episode 4 we kind of like slow down,
yeah.
for a very long time before picking the pace up again.
Yeah, and don't get me wrong. There's some very good conversations had here, and I did enjoy the dinner table scene. We get Bert's reasoning as to why he got severed. He has this belief that your innie's a sort of a separate soul, and it can go to heaven, and if you're out, he's been bad, and it can go to hell, and it's obviously setting up Bert's dark past. But we don't get clarity on that till later, just how bad he was in his past, and we obviously learn that he was basically the hitman, the cleaner for all of Severance's dirty work. Um, yeah, and so yeah, there's still some good stuff here, but yeah, we're like I said, certainly slowing down. And then episode 7, Chick Hay Bardo.
Yeah.
What's that referring to? That name?
So I looked it up, and it's, let me just quote it because I would not be able to repeat it to you. But where is it? The bardo of the moment of death.
If anything, that's more confusing than the words I
The
didn't
bardo.
understand.
Okay, so there's 6 bardos, right? Which are, I guess, elements of the. Let me just fucking. Where is it? I had the link. liberate you. It's so hard to like. I wanted to,
You know what, Tommy? You
uh,
could have just said, "I don't know either."
but I because I looked it up and then I completely forgot about it until this very moment. So I was like, okay, wait, I did do research for this, but I need to read it out loud because I'm just gonna fuck it up. And that I did. I was right. I fucked it up. But anyway, 6 barrios. Opportunities for liberation. Gurus all over the world use this bardos to kind of like explain life and how it works and how to escape death and illness and other pains through meditation. And so I guess in the case of Chikai Bardo is the Chikai of death, and makes sense since we're talking about a character who's supposed to be dead, which is Gemma or Miss Casey.
Yeah. So this is the sort of flashback episode. I'm not sure we do get links with our other characters here, or is this, do we only see Gemma and Mark in this episode?
It's just kind of like a flashback. I don't know if it's can be called a flashback episode. We just see everything from kind of like Gemma's perspective,
Yeah, we
both
get the
present and past.
yeah.
We see the trauma of her miscarriage, which is going to play a big role in the finale, and
I
generally
assume
in
I assume because when she goes to that hospital and she's filling out the forms,
yeah
it's like a lumen.
Lumon forms.
Yeah, yeah. So I assume maybe that has something to do with how they got her when she supposedly died.
And the doctor is there as well. Did you? Yeah, the weird well, I don't know if it's a doctor, the weird guy who kind of like appears in all of her rooms playing different characters, and a very creepy guy. He is briefly seen there in the moment where they are in the clinic waiting for their turn, when she's compiling the lumen form. So it's clearly, I don't know if it's gonna be revealed that she was kind of like a lumen creation from the get-go, and kind of like they put her in Mark's life because they wanted to do this experiment, like social experiment with him, or if she kind of like being like Lumen is this kind of like pharmaceutical corporation in a way. We can see that, even though if maybe it's not the only thing that they do, they clearly do that. So they had a pretty good idea of who Mark and Gemma were, and maybe having access to their medical data. They figured, okay, we can use these 2 people specifically for
Yeah,
this experiment.
yeah,
In because they're clearly trying to push the severance procedure to the extreme, to see if there's any sort of lingering feelings that can resist the severance chip. She goes to the dentist in one of the scenes, and then she comes out and all she can feel is just pain in her mouth, but she doesn't remember being operated on. She survives a plane crash. What was the other one? They make her write a bunch of thank you
she's
notes.
writing little Christmas cards and her wrist
Yeah.
is hurting. Yeah, yeah,
So it's clearly like, and we'll see in the finale what's the Cold Harbor room is, which is fucking horrible thing. But yeah, I think she's this experiment, and Mark is part of that experiment, and we finally see this character. And I thought this was another one of, I think, the best episodes of the show. It was very well made. Again, I love the way they portray this the change in scenery, because we can also see here like literally sets built so that they could match the shots that they were gonna intertwine. I don't know, that's the kind of sort of stuff that just gets me excited, because you rarely see this this level of attention to detail in a TV production.
Yeah.
So
No, I'm pretty sure that all the flashback sequences are all shot on film as well.
yeah, man, really, really beautiful. Just I don't know. I was in awe at how beautifully shot it was. Generally, like the entire show, but particularly this episode.
Yeah, I also
And
think
how
her performance is very underrated as well. Like she doesn't just this is obviously her sort of star episode, but
yeah,
throughout
she's good.
she plays like a robot almost so well. Like she really feels like she is this empty vessel at times.
But then you can feel, all her humanity coming out when she's playing Gemma, instead
Yeah,
of Miss Casey, I guess, or all the other characters which feel a bit different. I don't know. I feel like all the actors are doing such an incredible job. Like Adam Scott, Britt Lower, they're just insane. Like I have no idea how they do it. You can just feel the difference in the character, in the way they they walk.
yeah,
just
yeah, yeah.
just like you see Britt Lower walking, like, oh, that's Helly. And I think that's so impressive. So that was definitely one of the highlights. But yeah, very good episode, very interesting, and also finally some answers, even though Attila, the previous episode, kind of like sets up again, kind of like the reintegration and other things that are then, again for the second time abandoned, not for just one episode, but for two episodes, so 2 weeks.
Well, not just for 2 episodes, another one. Because
Oh, come on.
we go on to episode 8, which is Cabell's whole episode. So there's
Yeah.
obviously we see that Mark and Devon reach out to Cobell at the end to sort of tell her that Mark's been reintegrating, but it is another
Mhm.
whole episode where all of those plot points and themes, etc., have been left, and we now are focusing on one character here. And for me, this was the weakest episode of the series.
Oh, such an original take. No one has had that take so far.
That's because it was fucking boring.
I mean, I wouldn't call it boring. It was a
This
slow born episode in a slow born show. And
Did you say
it's
slow, boring episode or slow burn?
you heard what you heard. um I'm just okay. So I'm pretty sure. I have no proof of this, but I have a very strong feeling that this wasn't supposed to be its own episode.
Yeah,
When
we
they
we
were
yeah we spoke
in
about this when we saw it, didn't we?
in pre-production, I'm pretty sure, because if you look at season 1, it's 9 episodes, and it's pretty common for TV shows to have a varying number of episodes from season to season, but there's always usually a reason for it. And I do feel like 10 episodes in this season, and one of them is the shortest one, and it's the least consequential one in terms of the main plot. It gives us a bunch of revelations, but the main plot is kept on hold for a whole week. If you're watching this week by week, which we were, which can be frustrating. I'm pretty sure that season 1 felt so interesting and fresh because we were binging it. It's a very different experience when you have to go week by week and you're waiting for certain plot lines to resolve, and then the show decides to give you something else entirely. And I get that that's frustrating, but I don't like the fact that many people have called this filler, because I don't think it is. It's integral story.
Yeah,
It's just not the story that we care about.
yeah. Would you not? But well, like you said, and I kind of think the same thing, because I think this episode had like a 37-minute runtime,
Yeah, it was very short.
much shorter than all the rest of the episodes. So I do agree. I think this was maybe a B story that was supposed to be weaved in through another episode or two, or it was supposed to be so it was supposed to be seeped in throughout the series.
I mean, we have basically proof of this. There's a scene where Miss Cobell goes into the cafe to meet with that guy. What's his name? Hampton.
Yeah.
Is old chum, the one she knows from when she was child, kind of like slave in this ether factory. and she tells him something like, I need your help, meet me at the factory. And then we cut to the next scene where they meet at the factory, which is so weird because usually, this kind of stuff happens when you have stuff in the middle. Like, oh, let's, leave this character here and we go over there to see what this other character is doing. And then, oh, we're back at the factory. Oh, right. Miss Cobell was meeting that guy. But that's not what happens because they clearly took these scenes from other episodes and they put them all together because they decided to do this after having shot the whole show, and it shows that this they decided to give Cobell her own episode, and it does feel a bit meandering. It does feel like nothing happens for half an hour and then the last 7 minutes
Yeah.
are jam packed with revelations and stuff happening.
Yeah.
And so I agree with the idea that this is the worst episode of the series, I guess, because obvious reasons. It's still interesting, even though I want to ask you, what did you think about the reveal that Miss Cobell invented everything?
It didn't hit that hard for me, to be honest. It's like, okay, well, this explains why she's so integral and why she's such an asset to Lumen. But other than that, I don't know. It seemed a bit unbelievable to me. I know maybe it was because I had grown frustrated with the episode of how it was that didn't hit as hard for me, and maybe if it had been sprinkled into another episode, that would have been better.
Yeah,
I don't know. It's interesting that she's the one who invented it, but the reveal didn't hit for me, to be honest.
it's so weird in a way because it's I mean we get why, we understand a little bit more how Lumen works, and we clearly understand that she had all these projects and concepts and ideas, and basically the Egans took them and make them their own, and she was rewarded with kind of like middle management, kind of like office position, which is also kind of weird. Like, why would you be, the manager on a severed floor when you are the inventor of the procedure? I don't know. Like,
Well,
it
see,
feels
I think that
strange.
I think that gets into something which may be revealed later on in the show, that there is
Totally.
a weird connection between Cobell and Mark. And there's something, I think I've probably seen this theory thrown out there before, that Cobell's actually Mark's mother, and
Okay.
she went through a severance process during pregnancy, and so she doesn't actually know it. And because in the finale, when Mark's having the innie and outie conversation with himself, and she literally
Yeah.
runs up to him at the end, and she's like, "I care
I
for
care
you."
about you.
And I was like, what is that about? And in season 1, she was making him cookies and acting like his mother a lot. So there is definitely a weird connection there. And that's the only reason I could think why she would sort of be so, because she really wanted to stay on the severed floor. Do you remember they were going to give her a sort of promotion, weren't they? And she was like, no,
Yeah.
this is my job. This is what I want to do.
Yeah, I don't know. Like, I'm sure there's gonna be interesting answers to these questions. It's just, it felt weird. Like, as you said, it didn't feel rewarding to learn this.
Yeah.
It just felt strange. Like, are you sure you were planning this from the start, or you just you wanted to give Patricia Arquette a bigger role because it's Patricia Arquette?
Do you remember there was a scene in this episode as well, in episode 8, where Miss Cobell goes upstairs to her mum's old room.
Yeah,
And there's the breathing tube thing, and she lays down on the bed and she starts breathing through the tube
and making noises.
and making noises, and then she basically like falls asleep there, and then she
Yeah.
goes back outside, and she's like, "Oh, I'm in a rush. I'm in a
Hampton
rush."
goes-
He's
goes to
outside
pick her.
waiting in the fucking car for her to have a nap, and
It's
she
like,
rushes-
dude, what are you doing?
Yeah.
It's like, oh wait, I need to look for this thing. Well, why were you sleeping for 2 hours? Like,
again, maybe
it's dark outside.
maybe there should have been that would have been in a whole nother episode, and we would have had loads of scenes in between then.
But that would have been weird too, because maybe days are passing in the actual like storyline, and then we go back to Miss Cobell. Oh, is she still sleeping in her mother's bed? Okay.
And the guy's
Like,
still waiting outside in his car.
it was such a weird, like, I don't know, because it's clearly morning at the beginning of the episode because she's brushing her teeth for 2 hours, looking at the town. Which it's a fine scene. You can see that there's people there who are addicted to ether. You can see that this is a very derelict town, and you understand that Lumen had a part in, its downfall, which is, it's interesting world building. I thought that was really cool.
Yes, I agree. I do like the expansion of the world in this episode. It's
we never saw anything outside of the main town, and so I felt like that was very much appreciated, the way they went into, okay, this is an old town where there was ether factory and people were slave basically here working in this factory, and now that Lumen has gone to do other things and it doesn't need this factory anymore, this city is abandoned, and there's very few people here, and they're all addicted to ether because of this huge company. I don't know, I felt like that was really interesting. They could have done it in a different way, and it's probably, again, expectations of what we're gonna get, and then after a week of waiting, finally you boot up the episode and it's just Miss Cobell walking around his house with an old lady screaming at her. And people are like, what the fuck is this? I want to see Mark, I want to see Devon, I want to see Helly, I want to know what's happening with them. And then the reveal of, oh, I invented everything, just feels unearned and out of the blue. And so good and bad.
Yeah.
I defend this episode for its intent. I understand it. I understand also why people didn't like it.
Yeah, definitely. And I think also when you get that first sort of sweeping like bird's eye view shot of the setting of this, I can't remember what the actual place was called, but it's it's obviously like, oh, this is Cold Harbor, this looks like Cold Harbor because it's that old harbor town. And I was thinking, oh, this is going to be a massive episode where we're going to get some real big, and like you said, we do get revelations at the end, but I thought this was going to be some sort of like testing pool, this town, for all the severance chips, and these are all like the failed severed people that are left wandering around with like no personality or something, and that's why it's all
that would be cool. Okay,
yeah, because like all like the file names and stuff are like place names, so I was starting to I was starting to think that actually like Lumen are doing Severance on like a town-wide scale, and they have like some sort of maybe like a radar or a satellite, and they can just control a whole town. And I thought maybe that Cold Harbor was the first town they had done it to, or something like that.
I feel like Lumen comes off as way punier and smaller in scale than it did in season 1. Like all of a sudden you're like, oh, maybe it's just 5 guys doing everything, because there's not much. The severed floor, they walk around a bunch and they only meet the goat people and Bert's office. Like there's no
and we get the stupidest reveal of the whole series when they have a whole department of a brass band. Do you know what I mean?
Come on. Okay, we'll get to that. We got to that.
When I saw that, well, I mean, we'll get to that. But yeah, go on.
That was perfectly fine Severance kind of like humor and weirdness. I loved it. But
where does the band go? And it's 9 to 5 on a Monday to Friday.
That is the funny thing. That is the funniest fucking thing. That's like, okay, they're just loitering around waiting for someone to need a marching band.
Where these people are just sitting on the floor with trumpets in their hands, waiting for fucking Mark to finish this file.
And they were gonna go the previous day, but Mark called in sick because he was doing other stuff. So they were in the office just waiting when it's gonna be our turn. And then Mr. Miltrick had to go in and be like, "I'm sorry, guys, but it's not today."
Maybe they're
Uh,
Lumen freelancers and they're only in once a week. But I mean, when I saw all those guys roll through, I was just like, you're losing the logistics of the world of Lumen in a way sometimes when you throw in too much obscurity at it. But
and also, like, and I promise we'll go back to the, regularly scheduled program. But you know how after the episode they have a little featurette video, and the author, which
is it
I admire,
Dan
of course.
Erickson?
Dan Erickson, yeah, great writer. Very compelling. Well done. But he was like, "Oh, we were kind of like brainstorming what to do with the sequence where Mark finally finishes Cold Harbor, and then someone said, 'Oh, what about a marching band?'" And I was like, "Oh, that we need to do
I
that." I was like, "Is that how you come up with stuff?" Because I'm losing a lot of respect here. That is not how you come up with stuff. Like, if it doesn't make sense with the logistics of your word, then as much as I found the concept to be fun, and it was really surprising, and we'll get to that. But like, yeah, I agree with you that, like, I don't know, like, it doesn't really work uh in the world that you created, uh because
it's just
it begs.
it's just spectacle, right? It,
Yeah,
it
it's just, we wanted something big for the finale, but we are on a separate floor, so we can't really have anything, like a chase or like an explosion or whatever. So we're gonna have 30 people in marching band outfits
yeah.
playing instruments.
And it also felt like,
um
one of our favorite moments from season one was the milkshake dance.
yeah,
We need to get another one of those in this season, and it didn't work for me.
I don't like when shows or movies, movie sequels especially, feel like, oh, we need to have another one of these,
Yeah,
because it always feels just like another one of these. Like, um I don't know, it's always disingenuous. It's like, oh, this one thing that people liked, we need to do it again, but bigger and better. You can do it like with, I've been watching Daredevil Born Again. I'm sure we'll talk about it, but each season had a new kind of like uh fight sequence that was very elaborate and very long, and like a long take, and hidden cuts and whatnot. And like each new season had to make a bigger version of that hallway scene in the first season. And the best one still remains the hallway scene in this first season, because it was out of nowhere, fucking cool, iconic stuff, just Daredevil at its finest, just him punching a bunch of dudes in a dirty hallway. And everything else is still cool, but it doesn't capture the magic of that moment that was so unexpected. So yeah, I mean, food for thought, Dan Erickson or whatever.
and then
Mm.
we had episode 9, which I
Yeah,
also think was.
I know you want to talk about episode 10. I can feel it, but we still have one episode to go.
So episode 9 was also not a great episode in my opinion.
I mean, it was a necessary episode. It was, unlike the previous one. This one was setting everything up, and I thought it did a fine job. But of course, you're waiting for the big finale, which is the following episode. So I guess it does feel a bit meandering in points.
Yeah, and the opening scene for this episode kind of highlighted some of my issues with the second season. We have
Uh-huh.
Jaime Egan sitting down and he has breakfast with Helly, and they're eating eggs and they're eating them in a fucking weird way, of course. And
Of course.
he says, I can't remember the line, but it's such a bizarre.
Wish you had them raw.
Yes, that's it. Wish you had them raw. And I'm pretty sure that's the only line of dialogue said. And
Yeah.
and it's quite a long scene that we're sitting with them at the breakfast table, and it strikes me back to when Mark and Helly meet the goat people on that floor. It's like all the conversations, they're not having the conversations they should be having. Like,
Yeah.
I feel like every time that we cut away from the scene, that's when the conversations we need to be hearing are being had. I found that first scene with James and Helly in episode 9. I was like, this is starting to frustrate me.
Yeah, it's a balance that you need to strike between kind of like being mysterious and important, like the work that they do, and also kind of like rewarding the patience of you know mm, uh, people watching. Because if you have a scene like that and Ellie, like everyone is theorizing about everything, like people are saying stuff like, oh, she's eating boiled eggs because she's pregnant so she can have raw eggs. And people are probably forgetting that the raw egg thing is a reference to Kier's brother, and him having like this routine of like eating raw eggs as in the morning. And probably as we see in later episode, Jamie again kind of like wants his daughter to have care in her, like and reflect all of these principles, and she doesn't, and so is disappointed that she's not eating the eggs like Kier would do. But people are taking these scenes and just trying to figure out what they mean, and I feel like they know this, like the creators of the show, like Ben Stiller, and they are playing with our patience a lot, which is fine. I love when a show gives you just enough to kind of like make your own mind about something, and then kind of like subvert your expectation. That's the fun of a TV show, something that maybe a movie, for example, cannot do, because it's way more immediate in the way it delivers plot points and resolutions. But yeah, I feel like I agree with you. Even though I have maybe a little bit more patience, I feel like I still trust the writers, with a few exceptions, but I still trust that they have an ending point. They're not gonna fuck this up, and all these scenes are gonna make sense with the larger context of the show.
You sweet,
uh,
sweet summer child.
I choose to be naive about this stuff, because it's a miserable life otherwise.
That's my existence.
Just being cynical about everything.
So yeah, no, I totally agree, and it's not frustrating me to the point where I've stopped watching the show. I'm still
Yeah,
eager,
of
I'm
course.
still eager to know the where the story's going, and I still have hope that I do think the general, hopefully the main plot points have been mapped out and there is a definitive end to it. But yeah, we just
Some stuff has been added for sure.
yes,
Like,
yeah. And obviously in this episode, we get Irving in episode 9. We get Irving leaving.
oh yeah, that was a weird sequence of events. Like, okay, come with me on this car and I'll take you to the train station because I don't want to kill you.
And the big question
um
is John Turturro and Christopher Walken ever going to kiss,
yeah,
or are they just going to have their foreheads gently touch each other every time?
I mean, I feel like that's a sweeter, like more
Get
romantic
the fucking
imagery.
get the tongues out.
Yeah, I really wanna. Yeah, for sure. That's what we're all been waiting for. No, I feel like, yeah. John Turturro and Christopher Walken, by the way, they are great friends in real life, and apparently John Turturro was the one who suggested Christopher Walken for the role of Bert
Okay, that's
to
interesting.
Ben Stiller.
Yeah.
So I think that's really sweet, because you can feel like the relationship has this, again, sweetness to it, which it's a bit lacking in this second season, because they always interact outside of the office. So of course they are playing different characters, and yeah. And again, you get the feeling that they didn't have John Turturro on the day, so they had to do like a separate thing for him. And that's fine, I guess. TV shows work like this. And I hope that we're not gonna have to wait 3 years for season 3. Pretty sure, at least, like, I don't know, an year, 1 year, a year and a half, maybe.
Yeah, I think they have
um
stated they won't have as long a break in between these two seasons.
but yeah, so Irving and Bert, and then Mark, Devon and Miss Cobell meeting in the woods and doing stuff.
That was another thing about the end of episode 8, which I know loads of people have brought this up, but yeah, for me it immediately was bizarre that Devon's reaching out to Miss Cobell to help with the
Oh yeah,
reintegration process, even though the last meeting they had, thought she was a Lumen shill and she was trying to steal her baby.
it was bizarre.
And it's like
but
the audience, we you know, sort of Cobell's had her arc in this series where she's like, oh, now she's one of probably the good guys and she's going to go up against Lumen, but it's Devon and Mark don't know that. We do, and I felt like it was a bit plot convenience having them.
yeah, I was kind of waiting for just like a couple of lines of dialogue to justify Devon's decision. Kind of like, oh, Mark, while you were asleep, me and Miss Cobell had this whole conversation and she explained everything to me. And she came to me kind of like being like apologetic about the baby. And I trust her now because this and this and this. I felt like that was needed because, as you said, the show didn't give us enough to believe that Devon would trust her. Again, at the end of the day, you can say, "Oh, she was desperate." Her brother was apparently dying. The only person that she knows that is connected to Lumen is Miss Cobell. And another thing is, how does she still have that phone number? I don't know. Like, it's weird that she has that phone number and she still uses that phone. But anyway, it's a bunch of conveniences. They're not too egregious that I'm like, oh, such lazy writers. But they could have been explained a little bit better.
Yeah,
From
it was just it was very jarring, and also now people are starting to theorize that Devon is working for Lumen and things like that. I think people are suggesting because of how quick she was to do that.
I mean, again, like goes into, people are theorizing a little bit too much,
Oh yeah, yeah,
maybe.
yeah.
But
You were the one who said Rickon might be a goat, so
well, I mean, people are saying that. I believe it.
yeah, it was something that also frustrated me with that episode.
Yeah, definitely. I feel like, season 1 was just so tight and everything made sense and everything was moving the plot forward, and it was mainly one plot, right? Like, we mainly followed the innies, and everything having to do with the outies was important kind of like after the fact. Every time we would be like, I remember watching season 1 and be like, oh, I don't care about this Rickon guy and the sister. Let's go back to the innies, right? But then, in season 2, you're like, okay, now I get why these people are important too, because Rickon is a goat. But but yeah, I feel like there are a few things that kind of like make this show, like this second season, less effective at the end of the day than season 1, but I still like it.
Yeah, definitely. And was there much else in episode 9? I suppose. Yeah, we have the whole sort of subplot with Dylan and his wife, and he's been
Oh yeah,
coerced.
I remember you complaining about that
I,
arc.
I didn't love it. I didn't love it myself. I just felt it's kind of forced drama. It's a bit like I totally get how it could be an interesting dynamic, but it is just a bit like chucking Dylan in a love triangle with himself. I didn't love that. That's the direction that his character went on. When in episode 4, Irving kind of passes the torch to Dylan about, you sort of lead the investigation into what's going on at Lumen. And at the end of the first season, he's like, "Fuck you, Mr. Milchek," and he's leading the OTC of the breakout. And then season 2, he is back to being controlled by Lumen by with all these with all the rewards he gets, which is exactly where he starts in season 1. He's very controlled by the pancake parties or the waffle parties he gets.
Waffle parties, yeah. And he gets one at the end.
Yes.
Lucky guy.
And like all the little trinkets he gets, he's very controlled by those things, and it feels like season 1 was his arc to break out of that. And he just falls straight back into that, and he stops helping Helly and Mark with the escape and with the Miss Casey mystery because he's getting to see his outies wife, and also sort of betrays the whole concept of keeping the innies separate from their outside lives. You know, there's such a it
Yeah.
seemed like there was such a focus on keeping that all separate, and it was such a big reveal when we see Dylan's he's been activated outside and he's in his house and he sees he has kids, and I loved all that bit. And now it's like, actually, we'll let you see your wife once a week, and I'm sure that won't screw things up with how your work dynamic and your innie and outie work. It just felt a bit forced drama for me, and it's not where I wanted to see Dylan's character go this season.
Yeah, I get what you're saying, and I feel like it is a bit um, disappointing, I guess, to see him regress to this state, especially as you said, after kind of like Irving leaving him with these instructions that are vital to the completion of the story. And he's like, oh, I'm just gonna ignore this because Lumen is letting me see my outie wife, and so I don't want to lose that, and so fuck you. And I felt like that was disappointing, but also kind of like in character for him, to be afraid. And then you have, at the end, him kind of like rejecting everything. I mean, like, okay, I'm sick of being here, and kind of like resigning from Lumen.
He has almost the exact same final moment in both seasons.
Fuck you, Mr. Milchick. Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah. Again, like the
which
playing the greatest hits, but at the same time, looking at the show with the greater context of the last episode, I feel like the whole subplot with the wife was a way for the show to explore the concept of this innie and outie love, which is something that is necessary for us to better understand how Mark feels about Helly, and how Mark, outie Mark feels about Gemma. Like the fact that he decides to stay on the severed floor to be with Helly, even though it makes no sense. It makes sense to them, it makes sense to the innies, and we don't have that frame of reference because we're not innies. And so the fact that they explore this with Dylan and his wife Gretchen, I thought that was Gretchen, that was intentionally weird and really funny and really heartbreaking at the same time. I thought it was good, but like, um I don't know, I feel like that was their way to tell us, okay, this is how it works, see it on Dylan, so that then you don't need explanation or exposition of how it works when we need you to get on board with Mark's decision at the end, because he wants to marry Gretchen, which makes no sense. He should know that it makes no sense that he wants to marry his outie wife.
yeah,
But like,
it just
he wants to do it because his life is just on that floor,
yeah.
and he has no concept of anything else. So of course he wants that too.
And we get
Uh,
the I think in the final episode where he says he's reading the letter after he's handed in his resignation. He reads the letter from his outie back to his innie, and
yeah,
he's like, I heard you're a self-assured badass, and it's like, I don't know what you're seeing, because innie Dylan is like a baby. He's like a naive little baby. I don't know whether I
yeah.
would describe him as a
Well,
self-assured.
except for the cursing, I guess.
His innie, yeah, I suppose so, yeah. But I mean, when we see him with Gretchen,
Yeah, true.
he's very like first falling in love again. And yeah, I just found it a weird dynamic, and then it all wraps up perfectly in time for him to push the vending machine in front of Milchek.
Yeah, no, I get, and I guess now we're discussing season finale. But I get what you're saying, but again, I feel like many aspects of this season, the intention was interesting, and could have been cool, and the execution of it is somewhat lacking, and I don't know who to blame, if necessarily we want to blame anyone, but like, because it's everything, like like all the elements are so high quality. Like, the directing is great, the cinematography is great, the whole vibe of the show is so unique, all the performances are awesome. It's just somewhat the writing of certain scenes and certain dialogues which becomes frustrating because so many things are kept from us, and some of the things that we don't care for s- we spend so much time on. The all the individual aspects of the show are still amazing. It's just some of the writing, and I feel like a lot of the criticism that we have can be fixed, I guess we can say, with the later seasons. um you know
What? Yeah,
some
like
of the best
through more revelations as the story goes
through
on.
more
Yeah, yeah.
revelations, or like more tight writing, more rewarding conversations. Like, I feel like, as you said, so many conversations in the show kind of like end when you still want a little bit more. And I know that that's how they keep you watching, but like, sometimes we need more, and that's it. We just need a little bit more.
And yeah, we'll finally get on to episode 10, the finale, which we both watched on Friday.
Yeah, we've already discussed a few things,
Yeah,
but like,
yeah, we've jumped around a bit and we've mentioned a few things, but overall, what did you think of the episode?
so I thought it was everything it needed to be. I am super excited for season 3 now. I can see so many different routes they can take with the story, with the characters. And I also felt like, as I said, like, certain subplots that felt a little bit uninteresting or unearned, like the Dylan subplot with his wife. um, it all came back for this because we have finally like an episode, I guess, where the main theme is like Ini versus Outie, which was something that the whole season and the whole show has been building up to. And specifically, I'm referring to the conversation between Ini Mark and Outie Mark. Even though we have other examples of this in the episode with Dylan reading the letter that is Outie wrote him. There's a lot of confrontation between Ini and Outie, and interaction between Ini and Outie. And I thought that was what we were waiting for. We were waiting for this kind of interactions, because that's what makes the show unique. And so far, we've only seen one of these two characters at a time, kind of like, doing their thing. But now we have this amazing, probably my favorite scene in the whole season, which is the conversation between the two Marks, which, the editing kind of like at the beginning, we linger on him kind of like coming and going from the balcony as he records himself, and kind of like asks questions and then answers them. And then all of a sudden we pick up the pace and it becomes this conversation, like Mark is talking to Mark. And the lighting, and I don't know, the frame composition, I was in love. Like, I wanted this show, this whole sequence to go on for like 2 hours. I don't know, like, it felt so interesting.
I was just about to say before you spoke so glowingly. Do you not think that scene went on for too long?
I know. No, it could have gone longer. I don't care. It was so well done, and so interesting. Like, how they literally, finally, like, you've been complaining about the show being too vague, and now we have two characters literally telling you how they feel, what they want, and how these two things are in conflict with each other. Because Mark S, Ini Mark wants Helly, and Mark, Outie Mark wants Gemma. And of course, Ini Mark will help him because that's the right thing to do, because this, they want to kill Gemma, they want to kill Miss Casey, so he's gonna help her. But we are left with this big question mark: what is he gonna do once he frees her? Like, I feel like, once they have that conversation, the tension picks up and it never lets go up until the very last moment of the show. So it was very well done. Again, there are a few things that we can discuss that maybe could have been better. As we already mentioned, the marching band was a very weird and interesting choice to have, as well as the Kier animatronic kind of like conversation with Mr. Milchick. There's a bunch of stuff that it's weird in a good way and weird maybe in a little bit of a bad way. But overall, I loved it. I love everything about how they resolve the Cold Harbor thing, and then going down, confronting Mr. Drummond. How the Gwendolyn Christie comes into the picture again. I thought that was well done.
Yeah. Okay, well, so let's go. Obviously, yeah, it opens with the conversation between Mark, Zinni, and Alti at the beginning.
Yeah,
Yeah, we're sort of learning that Mark Zinni has now sort of had this new lease on life, and he's not going to want to go through with this plan, it seems like. And then we get
yeah,
the explanation of what Cold Harbor is from Miss Cobell, and that's
yeah.
a big reveal of what the whole MDR project has all been about. Did you think that was where they were going to go with it? Did you think that's what they were doing at the computer room MDR?
Um, I had my theories, and I still feel like we are missing a few information that like some of the information that will be given to us in later seasons. But I had my theories, and I feel like with the context of the last episode, we do get this overall kind of like theme for the whole show, like season 1 and season 2, which is grief. And I feel like Gemma kind of like represents in a lot of ways this theme of grief, and the way Cold Harbor and the last test, of to see, if the severed individual can really forget about all of her pain, the grief and the pain of miscarriage, of losing a child. And it's a grief that Lumen is weaponizing, by trying to incite all these reactions in her through all of these fucked up scenarios. And then the final scenario is, okay, let's just, pick apart the crib that you made for your baby who died, which is such an interesting is the wrong word. It's such a horrible thing, but like, I don't know. I feel like grief is one of those antagonistic forces in the story, and it's the emotion that leads many characters, particularly our protagonist Mark, to surrender half of their life to a system, which like the system that promises 8 hours a day where they can feel nothing, fear nothing, be nothing. And I feel like showing this scene, like showing us Gemma doing this and feeling nothing, and then Mark bloodied and fucking roughed up, like walking in and be like, Gemma, come with me, and she doesn't recognize me. I don't know, like I feel like that's the show. Like if you had any doubt about what the show was about, this is was what we were leading up to. So yeah, to answer your question, sorry, it was a bit of a detour, but like it is about grief. And I feel like when we see what Gemma's pain was about in her, flashback episode, and then all of a sudden we see it reintroduced here, I felt it was really satisfying and interesting how they brought that back and kind of like justify what they were doing to her, because clearly Lumen, is doing all these things to test their baby, their severance procedure.
Yeah. That again, I kind of agree that sequence from once Mark leaves the dance party and he
Yeah.
goes down the
The fucking dance party, you just can't stand it.
once he leaves that dance party and goes down the exports hall, that whole sequence from there to the end is fantastic. And because he switches in and out of his in and outy, and we see Gemma
That was so good.
switch to like 3 different characters. I thought the bit where he's taken Drummond down in the elevator and he switches and he accidentally shoots him in the neck, I thought that was brilliant. Like
That was one of my favorites moments too. And I thought of you while I was watching. I was like, oh, Tyler must have loved this bit.
it was very good. It was very good.
It was chef's kiss.
And just like we said, the way when they're kissing, going back up the elevator, and they switch back to Miss Casey, and he switches back to Innie. I thought that whole dynamic, like you said, that is what the show's all
They
about.
do all of the interactions between Ini and Auti, from the moment Mark gets Gemma in the Cold Harbor room to the moment they get to the stairs.
Yeah,
There's, Ini, well, Auti Mark with Ini Gemma, I guess. Then Auti Mark with Auti Gemma. Then on the elevator is Ini and Ini again, and then it's Auti Gemma and Ini Mark. It's just insane, and it's the kind of, again, as I said in the beginning, the kind of dynamic that you create when you come up with a high concept like this. You've never seen anything like this. This sequence of events could only happen in Severance, and that's what makes this show.
yeah, and it's so seamless as well. The transition, and we all because they've set it up so well. We all know exactly what's happening,
Yeah,
and even you're anticipating the switch, and you're like, oh, how's this new
yeah.
personality going to react? Yeah, and that's where the show is doing its best work.
That's what the show is. That's what the show is.
Exactly. And so we also get the goat reveal, which
Yeah.
I found disappointing. I thought where that led to.
Do you think that's it? Do you think that's just?
I think that's it. I think they're just there because you know how you've got the four tempers, right?
Yeah, and one is a goat.
Yeah, and malice is represented by the goat, so that's maybe the worst of all the tempers is malice, and so maybe because that's what the goat represents. Every time they complete a big project, they sacrifice a goat for the work, and I
Yeah.
mean if that is it, and that is just the case, that's very disappointing. And that first
No, that's not it, because Rickon is a goat.
sometimes you get it's when people theorize about what they think is going to happen.
Yeah.
It's so much more interesting than what does happen. And I thought they were going to be sort of the test subjects for the cloning process for the severance chips or something like that, And I thought there was going to be some crazy scene where we realized that one of the Egan founders is still living inside. His
Yeah.
consciousness is like trapped inside of a goat or something. It didn't really go to it went to the most basic
Yeah.
plot point that it could have done. Oh, they're just a sacrifice.
I I hope that that's not all they are. Like, because that would definitely be disappointing. But I do believe, like, yeah, there's this element of sacrifice that they decided to introduce because they needed something with the goats. But something like the theory that you just described, I don't think that's necessarily what's going to happen, but something like that would be something that would be revealed later in the story, like maybe at the end of season 3 or season 4. I don't know how many seasons they're planning to do. I don't think they should be doing more than 5, but right now we are still developing a lot of stuff, and I think some of the reveals that we want will come at a later date. So
Yeah. So I think I've mentioned this to you before, and I haven't actually. I don't know whether I've seen the full interview or I just saw a clip, and
yeah,
it was an interview with Ben Stiller and Dan Erickson
yeah,
talking about season 1. And somebody there, they were asked questions about the goat scene, and I'm pretty sure Dan Erickson said, "Oh, that was just something we threw in there as a bit of fun." As a bit of a red herring misdirect or whatever, and they've seen how people have taken that scene and run with it, and now they've been like, well, in season 2, don't worry, we're retroactively gonna fit that into the story. And that was when my worries for the show started to begin, because I
yeah,
was like, you can't have something that important and bizarre without it meaning something very integral. And I feel like they wanted to wrap that up in season 2.
so they can move on.
That's what I was thinking. Yeah.
I don't know, man. If that's the case, I am disappointed, of course. And as we said earlier with the marching band, you can't just be like, oh, let's just put something weird in here just because. You're not David Lynch. it's a mystery box show again. Like, you don't want to go the way of Lost, where you lose all of the goodwill that you built along you know seasons and seasons of television because you didn't have an end point for it. I don't know. I think I want to believe, I guess, as a hopeful naive guy that I am. I want to believe that they said something like that in the interview because they didn't want to hint at the huge reveal, or like they do have something planned for the goats, that it's not just sacrifice, but they didn't want people to pay too much attention to it because they want it to be a big reveal. And if you don't want to bring that much attention to the goats, why would you put them in the title sequence of season 2, with this whole, like, there were people pointing out the fact that because Rickon is a goat, and the name of the actor appears on screen as this figure on a screen turns from man to goat. And so people are saying, oh, that's the proof that Rickon is a goat. Rickon is the conscience of a goat put into a man through a severance procedure, which maybe it's too silly for the show, but maybe it's not silly enough. Like, I don't know, like, the show is being very deliberately silly. And I feel like something like that could make sense. They could make it make sense. And I don't want to believe that they just put it in there because someone in the writing room was like, oh, you know what would be funny? Goats.
But yeah, like you said, it could also be they don't want to talk about it because it is going to become a very prevalent plot point later on in the story, and I hope it is that's the case.
Yeah, let's hope together. Let's not be cynical just yet. There's other stuff to be cynical about. Severance is not one of those things. It's still good.
Not yet, not yet.
Yeah.
I suppose what did you make of the final decision then, like that's made in the episode?
So I wanna start this conversation with a question because I saw this, on the internet, like this kind of discussion. People were talking about the final scene and saying stuff like, "Oh, that's Helly," or "That's Helena."
I've seen that, yeah.
And what do you think?
They already did that twist in episode 4. I don't know
Yeah,
whether you would do that same twist for, only a few episodes later in the same series.
I
And
think.
also, yeah, I don't know whether they'd use that twist again. And if that is the case, if she has been awakened to stop Mark from getting out this building, this highlights another like logistical problem I've had with this season. If Lumen's such this big, powerful company, why is there no fucking security anywhere in
Yeah.
this place? Why is Gemma allowed to just run out and escape? Why is Mark allowed to just go down there? It's
Well,
I
everything
feel I
is
think that will.
so everything is so automated, and like the fact that people leaving the severed building, lose consciousness of what they were doing, kind of
Yeah,
like defeats the
but
purpose of
just
security. But yeah, I
but
understand.
if this work is as integral to the world and planet like they say it is, and you've got all the finances at your whim, you can do whatever you want. Why is that not more secure down there? Why is there so much room for error and room for mistake? So I feel like if somebody did tell Helena to go stop Mark from leaving, that just would seem weird to me, that they wouldn't have some sort of contingency to stop them from getting out.
Yeah, and also like, it's way more interesting to me if it's just Helly,
Yeah,
because then you are setting up a season 3 where it's literally Ini versus Outie. The Inis don't want to leave the severed floor because that's what all they know, and that's where they are, who they are, and where they've developed this love, and they just exist there. And there's gonna be people on the outside that want to get them out because they want their outies. And I think that's a way more interesting aspect to explore in a season 3 than, oh, Helena is manipulating stuff again. um it's just a more compelling plot line, because now we have kind of like Gemma on the outside, which is gonna have kind of like the Mark role of trying to get in some way and get information on Lumen and try to
And it's
save
like
his
yeah, and we got like a love hexagon now. We have
yeah,
it's
it's
like
not
a
just a
love
love
triangle.
triangle. Yeah,
Yeah, yeah, which is interesting, and I don't see them doing that with Helly's character for the next season, being her having to deal with the same trust issues with all the innies again. I think that would be a twist if they did do that.
yeah, me too. I'm glad we agree. And I
Yeah, and
also
also it's and it's like yeah, he turned away for love, and it would ruin that ending. It would ruin that sort of sacrifice he makes at the end if we just come back in episode 1 of season 3 and was like, oh, you were tricked. I think
yeah,
that would be a cop out.
I mean, he would have still done it for love, but it wouldn't be love on the receiving end. It would be this weird possessive thing that Helena has displayed, this kind of like attachment to Mark, which also kind of like went underexplored in this season. I feel.
And then they take each other's hands and they go running off down an
Where?
endless series of corridors. Where are they going, Tommy?
They're going to the goats, man. And with the fact that we are continuing this story and we're gonna see where they end up, it's a very engaging cliffhanger. It's just them against the world, I guess. But the world they live in is such a small and fragile place. We don't know what's gonna happen. We don't know if they're gonna survive. We don't know if the marching band is just gonna take them and bring them upstairs, because maybe they double as security. Maybe the security wasn't there because they were all playing instruments in that moment.
Well, it seems like the marching band joins up with Dylan and Helly, and
Yeah, yeah,
they're sort of
because
behind
everyone is
Dylan when he's like a
kind of
female
like
check.
rejecting Lumen as
Yeah,
a
and maybe that sort of sets up. Yeah, because obviously we've heard about this. Who was it? There was a department that had a supposed rebellion back in the day, and
well. That was we
that was all
never.
that sort of a made up story. It sounded like that they each told each other to keep them at bay.
Exactly. They didn't want the various departments to interact, so they made up these stories and these paintings that kind of like depicted horrific events happening in the past, so that people would stay at bay. And Dylan was the one was like, "Oh, what the fuck? We hate those guys," but like that's.
It's when the show is banging. Just
Oh, come on,
remembering
man!
those moments.
Still banging, still very good show, with a few blemishes. No show is perfect except for Better Call Saul.
We've covered everything on the recap.
Yeah,
What did so obviously you would give series 1 like a 9.5. You're saying it's almost perfect TV there.
yeah.
What would you give season 2?
It's an 8.5 for me, and it's a little bit less polished than season 1, which is weird. They had so much time to polish it, but I feel like it's really good, and I hold out hope that they are going to resolve all my issues with following seasons of the show. So yeah, 8.5, very good, and waiting for more.
It's interesting. I wonder how different my score would be if I did binge it.
Yeah,
I think
that's a big thing.
yeah, I think I would have enjoyed it so much more if I was binging it, and didn't have to wait the week in between episodes, and that week long wait was fine when the episode was really good, because I was enjoying all the theory and the chat in between that week. But when the episode was disappointing, it just dragged for me. And so yeah, I'd say the series 2 dropped down to like a 7 for me. Still has moments where we're reaching the heights of the show, like I said in episode 4, where we're still getting up to like sort of 9 out of 10, but it sort of balanced out with that latter half of the season for me. But I will certainly be tuning in for season 3, but I'm not going to say I'm super excited about it.
I am super excited about it, and I'm sure you will be too when it drops, and Rickon is revealed to be a goat, and
Hey,
also
that would be great.
Kier's reincarnation or something. I don't know.
Yeah. There's still so many things that I am eagerly seeing where they go with it for sure. Where do you think they're going to go with the third season?
So again, it's gonna be. I hope it's going to be a lot of innie versus outie kind of scenarios. I think the more interesting thing here is that basically Mark outie Mark became the antagonist, in a lot of ways. Like he is the one who wants to reintegrate and basically delete Marquez's existence. But Marquez has developed his own life and personality down in the severed floor, and now he's developed love with a character who also has a very conflicting situation with the fact that on the outside they're basically the heir to the company, and on the inside they are one of the he she has a very interesting line in the last episode. She's like, they give us half alive and they think that we won't fight for it. And I think the a way to develop the story is for them to fight for it, and maybe to involve the outside world a little bit more. We saw how in the first season there's like a organization that is trying to kind of like
Oh,
shut
yeah. They're
sever.
kind of like an anti-severance.
Yeah, like maybe that's gonna come into play, and maybe Gemma is gonna try to get in touch with them to find a way to because if Lumen wants the Inis to stay on the severed floor, and the severed floor and the Inis don't want to leave, then it's up to the people on the outside to kind of like get those people out. But then if those people don't want to get out, like that's going to be the interesting dynamic, I think, that they're going to explore in season 3, as well as revealing all the stuff that we still don't know about Lumen and its history and Kier. And I hope we see Irving again. Maybe his investigation is going to play a big role in revealing stuff about Lumen. And yeah, and Dylan is gonna marry his wife.
Dylan's in. He's going to marry his wife.
Yeah,
I think you're definitely onto something when you're saying, like, I think Gemma's gonna replace Mark's role in the next season. I have a feeling like she's gonna be the outside lead sort of investigator, potentially trying to save Mark.
especially because
And
she's such a beloved character. Like they want to expand her role, like they did with Miss Cobell in season 1.
yeah, exactly. I think the theme of sort of season 3 is going to be rebellion, and we will get, whether those stories were fake or whatever about the MDR rebellion, and loads of people were killed. I do think we probably will see something like that. I think there's going to be a lot of them sort of trying to sort of awaken all the other employees of Lumen, and it will really uncover the different areas of the facility, and we'll find out a bit more about what's going on there. But yeah, there's a lot of interesting threads to pick up on.
That's cool. Yeah, I would love to see an MDR rebellion, very bloody rebellion, but like where's the army? Also, I feel like some of the stuff that was depicted on PT's note in season 1 we haven't seen yet. We've
No, yeah,
seen
quite a lot of it.
so I feel like again, if they've planned this out, which I hope they did, that means that we are gonna see more of what's underneath the severed floor. Maybe they will find new departments and new things, and that's another thing that I feel like they could explore, and they need to explore for us to not riot in the street.
Both obviously fans of the show. Hope you enjoyed listening to our
Some
takes.
more than others, I should
Yes,
say.
and like we said, that might be a theme that we have amongst a lot of the stuff we talk about
We'll
on
see.
this
We'll
show.
see. We have adjacent opinions on many things, but often disagree on core things. So it's gonna be fun discussions all the way.
Please like, follow, and subscribe to keep up with all our video content.